Welcome down to the table. It's TJ Rogers and Eduardo Sachklik here at Grand Prix Milwaukee, and it is the 15th round. This is the final one before the cut to top 8. Both of these players with a record of 12 wins and 2 losses, and having that X2, 13 wins, 2 losses, going to be almost certainly putting you into the top 8 realm. So these two players really fighting for their shot in that single elimination top 8.
Yeah, I believe all the three tables on camera are essentially win-ins, right? The winner goes into the top 8, the loser probably $500 or $1,000 for finishing in the top 32, top 16, depending on breakers. Free pro points, a decent weekend, but not quite the Power Star finish that is a Grand Prix top 8.
And it's going to be a Merfolk Branchwalker that comes down, revealing cast down at the top of the library. That Llanowar not getting used this turn after it was the turn 1 play. And we've got a Pyromancer, Viashino Pyromancer, on the side of Tamaiko, dealing 2 damage to Lynn, knocking down to 18 already. Almost like it got to attack on turn 1.
Yeah, and Brian thinking quite long on this cast down, but seeing Brian's hand, it just seems like a great addition. Brian already having the mana to use it, has Ravenous Chupacabra along with a Swamp of Force, a Carnage Tyrant, and a Vraska's Contempt. So the cast down might be able to bridge that turn free if a Goblin Chain Whirler were to come down and get rid of this board. And well, or at least the, Llanowar.
Yeah, and that Branchwalker is going to be a 3/2, that Explorability. If you hit a non-land, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So right back to Oliver, who is going to attack in, and there's just going to be a really quick trade. Throws that Pyromancer in the way, and it's going to be the 3rd mountain and a pass back. No action as of yet. Could be holding on to something like Risk Factor in hand for Oliver. Brian Lynn, 4 mana and just kicking back, and there is Risk Factor. It's an instant 3 mana, and now Lynn gets to make a decision. Take 4 damage, or let Tamaiko add 3 cards to his hand.
Almost always you just take 4 to start with. But Oliver just kind of not... It seemed a lot of mountains in hand. So really what Oliver wants here more than anything is an Experimental Frenzy and hope that Brian doesn't have a clean answer to it.
Yep, and of that Risk Factor, it does have Jumpstart, so keep your eyes on that one from the graveyard. It's going to be coming back at some point. And as the life total of Brian Lynn gets a lot lower, then that ability to choose between the damage and the cards becomes significantly more restrictive.
Right. So let's just see how it develops here. Brian has a relatively passive hand for now. It will get much more active once we get access to 6 mana or something like the Doom Whisper, and Oliver deciding to cast Lightning Strike on the Llanowar Elves on upkeep. And it seems has access to Experimental Frenzy, but wants to make sure that the Lightning Strike is used up.
Yeah, and I think that was actually at the draw step, though I'm not certain, if there's a huge distinction between the two, but it leaves Brian Lynn with no actions for this turn 4. Right back to Oliver, who is going to play down Experimental Frenzy, and with 1 mountain remaining, takes a look at the top card and passes it back. Now Brian Lynn with access to Doom Whisper, the 6/6, jumping in to play right behind that Experimental Frenzy. Now untapping for Oliver. Any of those cards in his hand cannot be played. That does include playing lands as well as casting spells. Everything's got to be from the top, and it's going to be Viashino Pyromancer coming down, followed up by Fanatical Firebrand. At this point, it's just seeing what the deck is going to give you. Runaway Steamkin, the follow-up after that, and 3 cards off of the one. So far, this Experimental Frenzy really living up to its name, and it's going to go right back to Brian Lynn. This Doom Whisper, giant 6/6. It's got trample. It's got flying. A little bit of options. It's great on offense or defense. Where do you like it at this stage?
Well, it's a necessary threat. Without it, Brian wouldn't be able to control this board, and it's going to explode very quickly. Oliver getting 3 cards off this Experimental Frenzy, just showcasing the power of that card. Essentially, you drew 3 cards, and that's going to just keep happening and happening. And with Runaway Steamkin, it's going to really explode. And Brian has access to cast down, has access to Ravenous Chupacabra, but can only really cast 1. And deciding to be on the offensive, attacking with Doom Whisper and slamming down Carnage Tyrant.
The big bad creatures are hitting the field. Doom Whisper and Carnage Tyrant really holding their own against the board of Oliver Tamaiko. 3 of these offensive red creatures, and now we are just trying to make these plays from the top of the library. That Experimental Frenzy, meaning any of those cards in the hand, really not a factor at the moment.
Yeah.
Looks like it's going to be another 2-mana play as we continue to play off the top, and every one of these is going to put a counter onto this Runaway Steamkin. That does deal 4 damage to the Doom Whisperer. If there's anything else, he does have the Fanatical Firebrand. Another one of those means that he could chain them together to kill it, or could use something like a Shock or Lightning Strike.
Yeah, I mean, you just live off the top, right? There's not much you can do. And yeah, remember, not being able to cast cards from hand doesn't mean you can't cast them from your graveyard.
Now,
and here, Brian actually has to have a decision. Oliver had not played the card, so it seemed like the top card was either a Mountain or an Experimental Frenzy. It seems like a Frenzy. That clears the top of the library, and with Runaway Steamkin having 4 free counters, that might mean another spell to get rid of this Doom Whisperer. And this is going to be key. If Oliver can get rid of Doom Whisperer, I believe that Oliver will be ahead. Another turn with Experimental Frenzy going to be big. Otherwise, it seems like Brian might be very close to taking the lead. And with 2 Runaway Steamkins, next turn might be an explosion.
And Tamaiko using the Jumpstart on that risk factor, even with the Experimental Frenzy output, what that did, clearing off the top of the library.
Yeah, exactly. It was an Experimental Frenzy on top, but unfortunately, Oliver not capable of finding that extra point of damage to get rid of the Doom Whisperer. But at 14, can still take a hit. However, that extra black score is going to be a problem since now Brian can play both Ravenous Chupacabra and
Cast Down.
Yeah, that'll take out the 2 Runaway Steamkins, and we're going to hit the limits of mana. Obviously, 2 Runaway Steamkins with Experimental Frenzy would have kind of gone nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. I've gotten to do that a little bit myself, and as they start just chaining into each other, every time that you get 3 counters, you make that mana, which helps you build up the other one.
Yeah, and with this attack, I think Brian is going to take a slight edge. However, this looks like 2... Actually, 1 second. This looks like the Runaway Steamkin probably going to get killed by a cast down.
Sure.
So that leaves a Viage. So that leaves 5 damage on the table with Brian at 12 and a creature to block. I think Brian is still ahead, but it's not that much. If Oliver can just string the perfect sequence of burn spells, that might be good enough.
Let's see what it's going to be. We're taking a look at the graveyard here, and it's going to be a Mountain as the card for turn. And now, it's always hard to predict what that top card of the library is. But taking a look, maybe even considering the possibility of, nope, that's just going to be picking it up, whatever that card was. It was not going to get the job done. I have to imagine it was probably a land, which did not allow you to do anything else. So let's head on in to the sideboard. Now, taking a look, I think we do have a little bit of information about what else is going on the field. Do you have any information on that, Deborah?
Right. So I just got word from our text coverage team on our lovely judge staff on the results of table 1 and 2. It was an ID.
Okay.
So at that point, now they might have drawn intentionally.
No. So when you say ID, that intentional draw, yeah.
Right. So yeah, ID is an intentional draw. Usually, an intentional draw in round 15 is both players going, you know what, we kind of came far enough, and we believe that by tying this game, we're going to be able to essentially all make top 8. So that means that tables 1 and 2 believe with a draw that they will make top 8. And those players are Isaac Kraut versus Seth Manfield. So newly inducted Hall of Famer Seth Manfield, making yet another GP top 8 this year.
Excellent.
And Owen Turnerwald, also Hall of Famer, IDing with Jacob Tilk.
Okay.
A player that I know has put a lot of effort into the game, attended a lot of competitive events, and this is kind of finally a payoff for all that preparation, all that kind of hard work into the game.
All right, so already some of the results starting to come together in this tournament, and now we're going to be heading into the sideboard. Tell me a little bit about what you're expecting from Oliver Tamaiko on this mono-red deck.
Right, so the sideboard, 2 Banefire, free Dire Fleet Daredevil, free Fiery Kene, 2 Fight with Fire, 2 Rekindling Phoenix, free Treasure Map, / Treasure Cove. We're probably going to see the Dire Fleet Daredevil, very good against these Golgari decks. A lot of cheap instants that can be used. The 2 Fight with Fires also. Doom Whisper a little larger than what you'd like, but Fight with Fire can still deal with a creature. And in the very late game, especially if you're going to bring in those treasure maps, allowing you to essentially do it with Kicker, which can be as much as 10 damage to the head, or just clearing the board. And, 2 Rekindling Phoenix, just kind of a resilient top-end front.
All right, well, tell me a little bit. Golgari mid-range, very versatile deck, can really shift itself into the sideboard, so let's see what we've got.
We have 3 Carnage Tyrant, 3 Golden Demise, 1 Assassin's Trophy, 2 Thrashing Brontodon, 2 Death Gorge Scavenger, and 4 Duress. In this matchup, the Carnage Tyrant, you want maybe a copy or 2, but not more. You know that post-board there's going to be more removal. The mono-red deck is going to morph more into mono-red mid-range. So you kind of want that top-end friend, but you don't want too many. You don't want it clogging your hand. It's not the powerhouse that it is against Jeskai control. Golden Demise not really what you want either. It does deal with a lot of the early creatures, but only on curve. Runaway Steamkin usually grows too large. Something like Fanatical Firebrand might be able to nab an explore creature anyways. So you might see Golden Demises, but not usually that great, especially against your opponent's post-board plan. Assassin's Trophy coming in, you have to deal with Experimental Frenzy. Very versatile. 2 Thrashing Brontodon, the free 4 sizing important, although Lava Coil, very bad for it. However, if the Brontodon stays around, it's a very good blocker. It's just the Lava Coil is a great answer. Death Gorge Scavenger, sometimes a creature you board in. Usually it depends on the main deck how much you want to board out. But I think with the Wild Growth Walker package, we're not going to see Death Gorge Scavenger. And Duress on the draw has more value since you can afford the death card. But I wouldn't see, again, there's 4 Duress, you wouldn't bring all of them, maybe 1 or 2.
Okay, got to be able to prepare for either that Experimental Frenzy or those risk factors, though.
Even something like taking the turn 2 treasure map can have value, knowing what removal spells your opponent's playing with. But I don't like too many Duresses since... I mean, Duress versus Experimental Frenzy is kind of a song and dance, but once Experimental Frenzy is down, Duress almost does nothing.
All right, so heading into Game 2, Tomiko is going to be on the play with this mono-red aggro deck, and he is going to need to win both of these games back-to-back to find himself in the top 8. Brian Lynn really just looking to solidify his position after that Game 1 win with one of these sideboard matches.
Yeah. Just a little note, it seems like Oliver is playing with all unique mountains. I have not seen yet a duplicate mountain. So, Oliver Tomiko, not believing that you should match basic lands.
You know, sometimes there's a mountain and sometimes there's a mountain range.
Oh yeah, that was one of my tournaments. I had either the mountain or the mountain range. It went very far. I had the whole Pyrenees on my side of the table.
All right, so we've got a couple of mountains on this side for Oliver. Just an attack in for 1 with this Gitu Lava Runner, and it's going to be followed up by a Viashino Pyromancer. Brian Lynn kicking things off with a Memorial to Folly, then a basic forest, draws another one of those forests here. It looks like this matchup is going to have a little bit of mixing. I don't think that forest is going to match the first one either, so they're both on the same page here.
Sure. Well, at least they're kind of from the same series set. And Oliver here not using the shock for more damage, it makes sense. There's shock against Golgari midrange, it's surprisingly good. It clears a Branch Walker, it can clear a Jade Light Ranger in response to the Explorer trigger. So that's why you see Oliver not firing off the shock, waiting to see what the turn free play is. And it would have been a good answer to a Jade Light Ranger, but perfectly capable as well of taking down this Branch Walker.
And that shock is also going to end up giving an additional power to this Gitu Lava Runner, which makes it into a 2-2. Also with haste, though that's less relevant now that it's been on the board for several turns. It's an attack in for 4, and Brian Lynn absolutely on the defensive, but no other action from Tomiko there. And it's going to be followed up by this Jade Light Ranger, 3 mana, 1 left. And we're going to explore twice. It's a forest, and it's Ravenous Chupacabra.
That's staying. Again, the way to fight the mono-red deck, make sure the creatures don't deal damage. If the creatures don't deal damage, it's hard for your burn spells to kind of take over. And this is very much almost like a slig deck, right? You're trying to curve out, and you're trying to make sure that your creatures deal damage. So if you can make sure those creatures don't deal damage on the other side, then you're ahead. Look at this, right? This gets you Lava Runner. It's dealt 5 or 7 damage. The Pyromancer, another 6. The burn spells essentially allowing the creatures to enable their full potential, and that's why Ravenous Chupacabra is so good. It essentially acts as a ton of life gain.
And we've been really seeing that from this Lightning Strike and these shocks. They're not even going towards the face of Brian Lynn. They're just trying to clear the way to really further enable those creatures. And it's Branchwalker here, 3 mana remaining, not going for that Chupacabra this turn, instead going for the Death Gorge Scavenger. And this could be exiling a creature to gain a couple of life, go back up to 10. So now it's 20 to 10 with a Scavenger, that 3-2, as well as the 3-2 Branchwalker. Both of them, and
But Oliver has both Lightning Strike and Lava Coil in hand, and later down the line, that is the second Experimental Frenzy in Oliver Tomiko's hand. So
another swing for 4.
But that means any land, any spell's good. And yeah, I think this turn it would while I understand Brian wanted to maximize the mana, I think that turn would have been good for Ravenous Chupacabra. It would have been a way to make sure that even if Oliver has more removal, that you're not taking more damage. Get rid of the creatures in play. These creatures have dealt so much damage.
But now we get to go Ravenous Chupacabra into Find.
And that gets Walker and Jadelight Ranger. Wildgrowth Walker, Jadelight Ranger, that's going to do a lot of the work that Oliver did.
Yeah, and if any, if there's no removal from Oliver next turn, then the line is going to be to Wildgrowth Walker into that Jadelight Ranger, explore twice, gain 6 life, and make a 3/5, which is going to stand in the way of most of the aggressive creatures from Oliver's deck. In fact, I think all of them without any sort of help.
Yeah, but here Oliver drew the land, and it's time to experiment.
All right, so Brian Lynn, he's going to have one heck of a turn here with this.
But he is, right? We've seen it. Spoiler alert, it's Wildgrowth Walker and Jadelight Ranger.
So let's see what we're going to have at least a 3/5, and Tamako really hoping that the top of his library has got something special in store for him. There is the Jadelight Ranger coming down, and we are going to be back up to 12, as well as having a 3/5, but will it be paired with a 2/1 or a 4/3, or possibly in between?
Yeah, and here, the Deathcore Scavenger, kind of an interesting one. It does gain life, but you know that Oliver has access to Experimental Frenzy, and it dies to Shock quite cleanly. So I think the best line here might actually be to keep it, but only to make the Jadelight Ranger a 4/free. I don't think the Deathcore Scavenger is that important in this scenario, but what matters the most, Jadelight Ranger is a 4/free, and a Shock off the top would do almost no work. And that leaves Oliver Tomiko to draws to be a little thinner. But yeah, Goblin Chainwhirler here, just a board presence. Oliver would really like a Lava Coil here. Just looks like a pass, though.
And that's not going to be the case. So we draw our card for turn, play a land from the top of the library. It is Goblin Chainwhirler, and no other action for this turn. So it's going to be right back to Brian Lynn. We know about the Deathgorge Scavenger as the draw for the turn, and I think that's the only action available. But remember, on the far left of that mana base is the Memorial to Folly, which could get back quite a few of those other options.
Yeah, I think we're going to see the Ravenous Chupacabra come back. The Merfolk Branchwalker was exiled by Deathgorge Scavenger earlier. So yeah, the Chupacabra, get rid of the Chainwhirler, deal the damage. And yeah, it seems like Oliver had a dead card on top. It wasn't, say, a Lightning Strike, which would have been pretty nice.
And now we are getting aggressive on the side. It's now 13-11. Oliver looking at this top card and wondering what he can do with it.
Fire.
Ooh, that's going to eliminate the Wildgrowth Walker. It had 5 toughness. And it's just a pass back. There's nothing to be done. That 2 mana, such a restriction right now. Something like a Runaway Steamkin, which can normally help you push through that additional mana, not available at the moment.
Yeah. And the advantage would be in Brian's favor, except that Experimental Frenzy is so unpredictable in how powerful it is that, I mean, we're going to have to just see what's on top of Oliver's deck first. But Brian is going to put a ton of pressure here. Jadelight Ranger into, well,
Wildgrowth Walker, maybe a little bit too late. Other way. Should have swapped the order.
Actually, I would have kept it and then binned it after. I mean, there's a Doom Whisper there, but the nice line there would have been to keep the Wildgrowth Walker to ensure that Jadelight Ranger is a 4/free, but bin it on the second explore. So you explore first time, keep it. Second time, explore and get rid of it. And that's also what Brian could have done with the Deathcore Scavenger. You know, I think the Deathcore Scavenger was fine because it's an aggressive card in this scenario, so it's a good card to have. But yeah.
Risk factor is the draw there. We play a mountain off the top, continuing this theme of them not being too far matching. Though this is actually just kind of a slideshow of some of my favorite mountains personally from the game. So they're mismatched, but I love all of them.
Yeah, but here, between that Doom Whisper on top of Brian's deck and starting with a mountain for Oliver, I mean, okay, we've got Runaway Steamkin.
That's a start.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. We need other cheap spells, and I think Oliver might have run out of gas. And here, I mean, you can block the Jadelight Ranger and then go to 1, but then Doom Whisper. I don't know how you're going to deal with all of this. Oliver's at 1. Brian has a 6/6 flyer, and Brian is at 13. I just don't see how Oliver can come out of this one.
All right, so this is it. Oliver's last chance to try and make top 8 with this one. Draws a mountain. There is a Shock up top. We're going to fire that one down, and let's see if there's the perfect string of spells right up top. Is it going to line up nicely? Mountain comes down, and looking at that top card, either debating his options or wondering what his chances are of seeing this all come together.
I mean, it would have to be a pretty impressive string, but it doesn't look like Oliver's Oliver looks like he's concentrating. It doesn't look like he's about to concede. He's just trying to figure out what the best out is here. It looks like there's a difficult spell. Is this a lava coil? Yes, and it makes sense on Doom Whisper. Oliver's never winning the game. Yeah, I think Oliver made the right click there with the lava coil. Unfortunately, top of the deck was not friendly enough. It was friendly, but not good enough here.
It got us pretty close to that, but maybe looking to grab a shock off the top, something that would help to just finish out the last bits of damage on that enormous creature and help continue that runaway Steamkin further into being able to get multiple land there. But I do think that we're going to have the opportunity to talk to that winner as they're going to be heading into the top 8, and that's going to be a really exciting experience. So we already know some of the information earlier from those intentional draws, and this is going to be another step in solidifying that, and we're going to have a little bit of opportunity to catch up with some of the other matches at this round, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let's think of the decks that are already making top 8, right? So we've got Seth Manfield.
Yep.
I believe on Golgari mid-range. We have Brian Lynn on Golgari mid-range. Owen Turnenwald was on Izzet Drakes.
Yep.
I believe Isaacs was on Jeskai Control, and that leaves our last player, Jacob Tilk. I haven't had a chance to see what Jacob was on. Have you?
No, I have not actually had an opportunity yet, but I'm very excited. So let's go ahead and head on down to the field. We've got an opportunity to talk. Brian, it's TJ and Eduardo here. Congratulations on
Thank
that
you so much.
win. It's got to feel amazing coming into this tournament and ending up with that 13-2 record.
Yeah, it does feel amazing. Thank you.
The decision I thought was the most interesting one out of those 2 games was the moment you decided to attack with Doom Whisper in game 1. That was probably the most tense moment.
Yeah.
You could have decided to stay back and develop your board or attack. So can you explain your thought process in that exact moment?
Yeah, I just needed to put a clock on him, and if I'm going to have a chance of winning, I just knew I felt like I needed to start attacking, and I didn't want to just, he had Experimental Frenzy, so I didn't want to give him a chance to just go over the top and perhaps, kill Doom Whisper anyway. And so I knew he wasn't killing Tarnished Tyrant, so that was a safe blocker, and I just figured that I had enough life total to work with to be able to make that attack.
Sure.
Now, your results with the deck are excellent, but I'm curious, in your deck building, you chose to go with significantly fewer of the main deck Carnage talents than many others that are on that green-black archetype, with only one in the main deck. How has that felt throughout this weekend?
It's felt great. Well, I've actually drawn it in some game 1s where I really needed it. So perhaps there's some justification for having a second or third copy in the main deck, but being able to play the fast creatures really helped against aggro, and also put a clock against the faster creatures, the 2-drops and 3-drops with Explorer. I'll put a clock against decks like Izzet Drakes, which was what I played against the most this weekend.
Sure, right. You're playing free copies of Doom Whisper in the main deck. That makes sense.
Correct.
It's a very strong card against the Drake's deck. But you still have access to free Carnage Tyrants in the sideboard, so I guess main deck you were more worried about the aggressive in Drake's deck, and then in the main deck, and then your sideboard is more tailored for the control decks. Is that roughly right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, for duress, free Carnage Tyrant on the board, you're ready. You're like, okay.
Yeah, we got what we need for the control matchup, yeah.
What was your hardest moment today? What was the decision? There's a lot of rounds you don't see on camera. What was the most tense and hardest moment of the day?
I lost round 1 of the day to Mono Red, which is supposed to be a good matchup for this deck, and I just lost to an Experimental Frenzy that went out of control, and losing your first match in day 2 to a good matchup doesn't give you high hopes for the rest of the day. But I was being able to recover from that.
Yeah. So you just strung out 6 wins.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And what a way to end it, too. Start the day losing to an Experimental Frenzy, but you got to end the Swiss rounds by beating Experimental Frenzy. So you were able to get your revenge against that card.
Yeah, absolutely. We took it down finally. It was actually my only losses were to Mono Red and Experimental Frenzy specifically throughout the tournament.
Yeah. And also, there's you're 13-2. No matter what, you got that invite to Pro Tour Cleveland. Is that I don't know what your Pro Tour experience is like. Is this your first or?
This is my first Pro Tour.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to Cleveland myself, and that first Pro Tour I always find is a very special experience. So congratulations on making it, Brian, to the big stage, and good luck, for the rest of the competition. I believe we'll see if you make top 8. I believe 13-2 pretty much makes it, but
yeah.
Good luck for the rest of the competition, and good luck at the Pro Tour down the line.
Thank you so much. I'll see you there.
All right. Wow, just seeing that green-black deck, and I like seeing just those small variations in the deck building throughout this weekend have continued to fascinate me in what it is that they were actually preparing for.
Yeah.
Some of them going for those aggro matchups, some of them going for the control matchups, but that is going to go ahead and take us out with the end of that match, and we'll be right back with some more Magic here at Grand Prix Milwaukee.